Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Eight Principles Voices. This is Larry Johnson, your host and founder of the Eight Principles. And I'm delighted to have with me today a young man, and he is younger than me, by the name of John DeLange. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much, Larry. I'm excited to join you.
Well, and John is one of those, I hate to use this word, but I'm going to use it anyway. One of those young overachievers, the people that you love to hate, but he's just really winsome and good about it. So he comes at it with decidedly lack of guile and presumption, and I like that about John, which makes him that far more wise for his age. So John has an incredible background. I'm going to let him tell you about that. He currently is on staff at a nonprofit and has his own a consulting firm as well, if I understand this correctly.
That's right.
And
Yes, sir.
so he just can't be stopped. He's just doing. But the reason he's invited on today was that he shares that essence of the eight principles, and that is, it is about a relationship. Philanthropy is about a relationship between investors and investees, and what brings that together, and the creative impulse that has. So, John, tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing, and just a little snippet.
Sure thing. So my background started in politics, Larry, professionally. I worked on governor's campaign in Texas. I'm from the Midwest area. I grew up on a family farm and ended up in nonprofit development work after realizing I didn't want to be a political operative and travel around the country for my whole career. And so instead, I decided to trade that in for traveling around the country as a major gift officer a few years later at a national nonprofit with Summit Ministries, where I currently work. I lead our nationwide direct mail and digital fundraising efforts. And I also still have a portfolio of key supporters in the Midwest. We just closed our first seven-figure cash gift at the end of 2023 with a family from the Midwest here after a multi-year cultivation cycle with them. So I do some coaching and some offers through an organization called the Strategic Fundraising Plan with my partner, Evan Cox.
Right. So I hate superlatives, but I'm going to ask you this anyway. What do you like most about fundraising? What is it about fundraising that you like, that you enjoy, that brings you joy?
Sure. The thing I think that brings me joy is seeing the people that are passionate about a specific cause and how their eyes light up when they recognize that they could be a meaningful part of a solution to something that's wrong in the world. And as a fundraiser, as a professional fundraiser, day in and day out at an organization like Summit, I get to communicate that opportunity to our key supporters and to our general supporters. And in my work outside of my role with Summit, I get to help fundraisers that may feel stuck or burned out or overwhelmed articulate the mission of their organization in a way that's simple and helps them uncover that same joy with their supporters.
I love it. Joy, simplicity, giving the investor, and that's what I call donors, an experience they can't purchase. Think about that. That's what you're offering them. So, what do you say to people that say, this is simply a straight transaction? I'm going to cultivate this person, ask for a gift, and I'm going to move on. What do you say to that?
I think there's so one of the things that flows from my worldview as a man of faith is that individuals are not valued based on their capacity, and that is not only financial, it's also physical capacity, the level of development or the environment that we find ourselves in, or the degree of dependency that we have on someone else for survival. Larry, you wear eyeglasses and I don't. I'm no more valuable than you are because I don't need corrective lenses in front of my eyes. And in the same way that there's no more value inherent to an individual simply because they have more financial capacity to give. Now, as a steward of time in on behalf of an organization, I need to invest it where it has the greatest financial return. So many times especially faith-based fundraisers, push back on key supporter relationship engagement strategies because their time is limited, and they say, I don't want to only spend time with those that have significant wealth to support our organization. But as someone who's stewarding 40 hours a week or 20 hours a week or 5 hours a week for those burned out, frustrated, and executive directors that are just wondering, hey, I only have so much time to put towards fundraising. How do you find the best investment of that time? And that's in those relationships. And sometimes there is a transactional element because dollars are passed back and forth, or ideally one direction towards the nonprofit in most cases. But it's not a judgment of value on the individual. And I think that helps us guard against the transactional mindset.
Well, as you were describing that, I remember several years ago there was a young man who ran a Christian organization, and we had a conversation. He says, "Well, we subscribe to the small gift model," and I said, "So, Bill, what's that?" And he said, "Oh, we're just seeking small gifts." I said, "Well, you're doomed to fail then, because that goes against reality. Reality meaning the Pareto principle. 80% of resources comes from a 20% source." And I'm drawn to a biblical example here, John. I think you're familiar with the parable of the 10 talents, are you not? All right.
Yes.
And in that parable, preceding that, Jesus says, and the kingdom of heaven is like this. Okay. So it's like what he's going to describe. All right. And he describes a situation where a landholder apportions resources to his tenants, one a great deal at 10, one at 5, one at 1. Then he leaves, and a while later he comes back and he asks for an accounting. And this is where it gets really, really un-American at a point. Okay. When the man who was given the most took the most risk and had the most gain. The man who was given some took a little risk and had gain. But the man who had very little was so fearful, not of himself, but of his master, that he hid it, the proverbial under the bed routine. And then he pulled it out and said, "Here, I know you're a really hard taskmaster, so I'll give you back what is yours." Well, the master was so infuriated by that he took what that man had, nothing, and gave it to the one who had everything. Now, people get kind of uncomfortable about some of that because it's not, we're as Americans, it's the fair and square kind of thing, that's not what Jesus is saying here. But you're talking about something that goes back to this apportionment of time and resource. Those who have been blessed or burdened, depending on your point of view, with resource need, especially those in your community, in my community, they feel an obligation to be wise about it, to be good stewards with it, not to buy another house, not to buy another boat, not to run around, whatever. It's, what do I do with this? And of course, also people at that level, buying another house, what does that mean? What's that going to get me? So I know what you're talking about.
Well, I think, so an anecdote comes to mind, Larry, and it connects with your principle that donors are the drivers, and that you find the intersection of your shared vision for something that would be unattainable either by the organization by themselves or by the supporter who is making the shared vision possible through their financial gifts. I was sitting with an executive director of a mid-7-figure organization a couple of weeks ago, and he shared with me a story where he turned down the gift of a building from a supporter who walked in their door. They were a giver, and they said, you're a social services organization. This is a strategic location nearby to a population that you are serving, that you demonstrated success in serving for several decades. And I would like to buy this building for you and gift it to the organization so you can put a program in it. And the executive director was willing, he said it was tough, and he was willing to tell that supporter, said, I can't accept that that gift. It's very generous, but it doesn't fit with the way that our organization is set up to serve these vulnerable men and women. And we would love your support in any of these ways that fits the long-term vision of the organization. Now, they had a difference of vision in that point, and that supporter walked out of the office somewhat frustrated. And the rest of the story is that they came back later on with tears in their eyes and said to the executive director, "I'm so glad that you told me no, because I feel the burden to invest the resources that I've been given through appropriate stewardship, great financial management, the financial engine that they were called to care for. They felt a burden to invest it well for organizations that could utilize it properly." And the reality was that building wasn't going to be utilized properly. It would have been a gift, and it would have been a financial asset, but it would have been a drain on the organizational resources and a distraction from their overall mission. And so that relationship was rekindled around shared vision that they negotiated together. But it took both parties being willing to speak the truth and come together as partners in the long-term outcome.
That is so incredible. A tale story. This happened to me when I was at a liberal arts college back east, and it was a denominational school, small school. And one day I got a phone call. Well, it came into the office, and the caller said they wanted to speak to the vice president, and that was me. So they put it in my office, and the guy was given the guy's name, and we didn't know who this guy was. I mean, he was not an alumnus. He was not a parent. He was nowhere on our radar, and he wanted to give the college $1 million right now.
Mm.
Well, being the somewhat cynical person I am, right away I was like, okay, so what is this? Is this drug money? Is this money laundering? What is this? What's going on here? And so I forgot the guy's name. So I'll say Mr. Smith. And I said, so Mr. Smith, I'm very flattered that you would like to make this kind of investment, which is substantial. But I'm a little puzzled as to your motivation for doing so. And he said to me, well, I'm in a very acrimonious divorce. And if I can't keep it, my wife sure as hell isn't going to get it. Okay.
Mm.
So I immediately called my boss and I said, so, who's the president, do you want this money? And his response, remember, this is a denominational school. His response was, sure, devil's had it long enough. Take it. And I said, okay. It was clean and everything was fine, but okay, fine. But that was, I think, the most outlandish thing I've ever experienced in my career. And you're just starting out, so you're going to have some tales to tell too before this is all over with. So tell me, now you're young and you're far more, you grew up with, did you grow up with a smartphone? I guess, didn't you? Or as close to it? I mean, it was 07, 08.
I got a smartphone when I was in high school.
Okay.
And so that was a result of my own employment. I was very excited to go buy the latest Apple product.
Okay. All right. Well, the first one didn't come out to 07. And so, and even it didn't work half the time, but so now but so then you've seen sort of the transformation of communication and interaction with people and the way it works. And you've also, I'm sure, witnessed the incredible sophistication of the new CRM platforms, the predictive donor analysis platforms, the wealth asset screening platforms, all this sort of stuff. Because when yours truly was first doing this sort of thing, everything was on 3x5 cards. And if you wanted to do research, you had to have a warm body traipse down to the courthouse. That's what you had to do. And that's now it's all at your fingertips. So I want you, this is a two-pronged question, sort of how you see technology benefiting or being a bane, and then also how you think it could be used more effectively going forward.
Sure. So at the philosophical level, what I've noticed as a young man growing up in the midst of another one of our technological revolutions is that information went from being scarce to being overwhelming.
Mhm.
And nonprofits are not exempt from this whatsoever. And so when we look at something like a wealth screening score or public domain searches or things like that, those used to be scarce, right? It took significant activation effort to go down and find out whether or not Mr. Smith owned a boat or had a pilot's license or made a political contribution.
Mhm.
We might have those things at our fingertips, but we have it for so many individuals that where, as a fundraiser, where do I invest my time on the stewardship matrix that we were talking about earlier? Where do I invest my time for greatest shared vision casting? That's still an open question, and I think that flows back to the fundraising professional to utilize their intuition and their process of relationship building to build trust, to build awareness, to authentically connect with the individual that they're called to steward. So that's that on the broadest sense is, what I see going on in the nonprofit landscape. How do we leverage the technology? Well, in some ways it's making the transaction easier to facilitate. One of the things that I took on as a project at our organization 3 years ago was recognizing that we had about the industry average, which is pitifully low, about 85% of the people who clicked give somewhere on our website left the giving page without completing their transaction. And over time, we were able to make specific changes to our flow, to the layout, to the optionality that was on the page, to where we were seeing nearly 50% of people at the last week of 2023 complete the gift once they reach to the giving page. And I think that's a good use of helping the supporter complete the giving action more quickly through the right use of technology. And that had six-figure implications for our organization at Summit.
All right, so you're talking about the proverbial stranded cart. It's just out there, sitting out there, and
Yes.
you obviously did some things that made a tremendous net difference. You want to share the websites that people can go to see this wonder that you've just completed? Well, what's the website?
Sure, you can visit summit.org and you can complete your gift very quickly and easily at summit.org/give.
So it's Summit, Summit,
Yes, sir.
S
Summit.org.
SUMMIT.org, I guess, /donate, I guess, but just go to the homepage and you can see it from there. Well, I'm going to go see it myself when we finish. And here's why. Um, so many nonprofit giving pages. Well, yeah, let's just say that they don't do the job. Oh, it's Summit with one T, SUMMIT.org. All right, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, so I'll throw this out there as well, Larry. What I've noticed about the tech platforms is that they're presented oftentimes as the solution, but they need to be implemented within your own context.
yes.
So upgrading your CRM isn't going to change the leading indicators that your frontline fundraiser team has when they go out and make phone calls or text their key relationships or things like that. Just because it's easier to put the notes into Virtuous or Razor's Edge doesn't mean that we've solved the human challenge of are they doing that thing. And yeah, we built our giving layer in similar to some of the industry leaders that have conversion rate optimization and take into account best practices around user experience and user interface design and that sort of thing. But it still necessitates us having a process for generating new relationships, interest, and content that's relevant and inspiring to our audiences.
I couldn't say it better, John, because what you've done is made the transaction more seamless to allow for the relationship to be primary. That's what you've done. Because now, well, I think I know, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Uh, what about these platforms that, and I kid you not, that now boldly claim that they can tell you exactly which donor is going to give you exactly what and when. And all you need to do is present yourself. What do you say to something like that?
I think the question, it may what I've noticed about AI and some of the targeting and things like that is generally they're better at the data analysis than humans are. However, they can't predict in a granular sense what specific individuals are going to do. Right? I halfway through the year in August of this past year, I saw someone click on an end of year email and make $1,000 gift. I don't know what was going on in that person's story, but I guarantee you that the AI didn't predict that that person was going to log into their email on August 14 and scroll all the way back to December 28 and make a gift based on that motivational tracking code. That's the sort of thing that we just say, hey, these are the people that support the organization. We have that shared vision, like we were talking about earlier, and they may use whatever format they like to complete the gift.
Okay. All right. Um, AI, artificial intelligence, is simply a statistical tool that creates a guess. It's a guess. And, um, and, you know, I used, when I was in higher ed, I used one of the very early examples of a wealth screening device. It was pioneered by Ben Swaley, the consulting firm, and it was one of the first on the market. And it's a very rough, gross tool that kind of gives you some idea of where assets are, and that's it. It doesn't really delve into motivation that much. Well, it can't really. And then, of course,
Sure.
people are fundamentally irrational beings. They don't make rational decisions. And for people to assume they are, it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Um,
Yeah. Larry, are you married?
I
Do you have
have
children, grandchildren?
I have three
If
children, one grandchild, and I have a wife and a new dog.
so any of those individuals, I imagine they would be irate if you anytime you chose to text them, simply used Apple's autofill feature for choosing the next word in the sentence that you were going to send to them.
Mhm.
That would be incredibly frustrating for your wife. It'd be incredibly frustrating for my wife too. And they would quickly see through the facade of communication that you were attempting to present through that
Mhm.
autocorrect or the autofill feature, right? And if we do that with our supporters, we're not offering them relationship. We're not offering them the opportunity to share their deeply held beliefs and find a solution for a positive shared vision. We're giving them we're giving them a computer's guess, and that's where AI is going to fall flat because they're in the landscape of all these tools that are out there. People are more lonely than ever. We're more connected than ever online, but we're more disconnected human to human.
Mhm.
And that I think is one of the most beautiful aspects of fundraising is that we get to go and connect with people that are in wildly different places in life than us, that are passionate about many of the same shared values, and we get to connect and find those moments of authentic humanness between two people. And one of the ways that we had set up this conversation was talking about what are some of the values that are available to young people who want a career in development,
Mhm.
and that jumps right to that. There's If you're in your 20s or your 30s and you're considering a career in development, you have the opportunity to build deep and meaningful lasting connections with people that are removed from you by decades and in many cases not accessible outside of the development function. You automatically have 100 mentors on your portfolio if you're a 25, 26, 27-year-old graduate who has an entry level position in major gifts. How amazing is that?
You have hit upon one of the things that I found one of the most rewarding is where else, how else could I get access to some of these people? and it was one-on-one, almost
Hmm.
always in their own settings, getting to know them. And one thing I've discovered, and I'm sure you have as well, is that people who have who are successful in the broadest sense of that word, financially, professionally, emotionally, community, which all contributes to being in philanthropy, um, they're incredible people. And to get access to that kind of person is incredible. And I just, yeah, and I still count some of them as my friends. And it's like, wow, how else could I, and I learned so much from these people at the same time, because yeah, yes, how else can you get access to that? Well, you can't unless you're a peer, which as a major gift officer, we're not peers with these people, but we get access to them in a way that other people cannot get access to them. And they welcome us as friends. I'll give you a little story, John. You'll have some of these. You probably already have some of them. I worked with a man who was in his 70s when I was working with him, and it's been a few years. And he lived in Northern California. And I won't share his name, but I will say that he was one of the five original founders of a little company called Intel. And we worked together for about a year and a half with his alma mater. And I would go and meet with him periodically. And at one point, he says to me, Larry, I'm really concerned about giving you a, significant gift. Now, the word significant for him would be 7, 8 figure, that kind of thing, 6, 7, 8 figures. And when you're a fundraiser and you hear those kinds of words, especially at an institution of higher learning, there are a couple of things that your mind immediately goes to. All right. All right. Did the president piss him off? Number two, did he read something in the student newspaper? Okay. Number three, what's going to happen? What's he going to lay on me here that I'm going to have to deal with?
Hmm.
Okay. He just looked. I said, "Well, why is that?" I called his name. He said to me, "Well, I'm afraid if I do that, you won't come back and visit me."
Hmm.
Think about that. The money had absolutely nothing to do with it. Zero, zip. What did he value? The relationship. That I was taking my time to fly out from the East Coast 4 to 5 times a year. Of course, he wasn't the only person I'd visit while I was out there, but I would make that effort. We would have dinner together. We would, go have a meal with his family or whatever it was, do things together. I had another one that in Southern California, we played golf every time I would go. And believe me, if you've seen me golf, you know that it was, okay. And this man was a scratch golfer, all right, that we played with.
Okay.
He was I was sort of an adopted son, let's put it that way. And he got such a blast out of it, you know. So
Hmm.
that's the joy of what we do. So tell me a little bit. You mentioned earlier, I want to pick up on this. You have done major gifts, but now you're running a direct mail program too. Did I hear
Yes,
that?
I am.
All right, now
Yeah.
it's like
I
gong.
went the wrong direction
All right.
in my career progression for some people.
So tell
Usually
me.
you start off in the small gift world and you move to mid-level, then you can work in major gifts. So is it if it's helpful to think about it this way, I started off working for a relatively small organization that was supporting pro-life pregnancy centers, and I was assisting their president in events management, helping him draft personal communication to his key supporters and finding sponsors for their events, that sort of thing. He recommended me as the director of development for one of the centers that their organization supported in when I was in my early 20s. And so I found myself as a director of development for an organization that was raising about 700 to $1 million a year. We hit our first 7-figure year during my tenure there, and that was a joy. And after that, I was an alum of Summit Ministries. They do student training programs for students that are wrestling or considering the intellectual and philosophical foundations of their Christian faith. And so, because I was an alum of that program, they reached out to me and asked if I would start doing major gift work in the Midwest. And so that was my on ramp into major supporter fundraising.
Okay. Oh,
Then then because I had started a business doing digital marketing on the side, when we had an opening in our nationwide direct mail and digital fundraising program, I got asked to fill that chair and keep keep going with some of my key relationships that I'd been cultivating for several years.
okay. So how many hands do you have? I only counted two there. You got some more that you and keeping
Now
up.
that I have a son, I'm wrestling with my own capacity there. I got to tell you, it's one of those things that changes the mode of life, and I'm grateful for that. And like we were talking about earlier, no one is valuable based on the output that they do or the financial capacity that they bring to an organization, or that they're not intrinsically valuable in their personhood. But uh, I'm a performaholic. Growing up on the family farm, there's always more work to be done. It seemed like.
Oh yes.
So
Yeah. My wife.
but learning to rest and play in major supporter fundraising has been helpful in the last several years.
Well, not to give away the show, so to speak, but what is it you'd like to do that you haven't yet done? Maybe you don't want to share it, and that's okay.
I don't have a good answer for you on that one off the top of my head. I'm in a spot where my wife and I consider we are considering adoption, and so that's one thing that is close to her heart and part of her family story. So that's something on the personal front that I look forward to, Lord willing. And I've always appreciated the opportunities that I've been given to help organizations utilize better tools. And I see a lot of small faith-based organizations locked into doing the same thing year in and year out and wondering if there's a better way to do it. I think the answer is yes, but I haven't found a way to deliver that to those organizations at scale yet. So that's something I'd like to do, Lord willing.
Okay. Well, that's a very meaningful thing, actually. We shared a little bit about, I shared a little bit about my background and how when you're working for one of the top consulting firms in the country, their business model doesn't lend itself to working with small organizations. And yet, the very counsel that they give their very nice, high tone clients is the counsel you'd give to a very small organization, only at scale. That's the only difference. Because yeah, oh, this has been wonderful. I mean, we're going to do this again, John. Don't think you're off the hook just yet. We're going to come back to this. But is I wasn't going to ask you a trite question. That was a trite question. Let me ask you that. Um, what does 2024 look like for you?
2024 for me has been focused on doing more long form content creation. And so in the start of 22, I started writing every single day online around a philosophy of faith forward, relationship oriented fundraising,
Mhm.
and doing my best to apply my Christian worldview to my work and development. And what I recognized was I was often writing to myself when I was 22, 23, frustrated, feeling burned out, anxious, overwhelmed in a small nonprofit. And so what I'm doing in 2024 is doing podcasts like this and writing long form essays each month uh, to myself, basically, in a spot where I felt like I had to do the same thing over and over and hope for better results in my nonprofit fundraising. So posting those on our website at strategicfundraising.com or strategicfundraisingplan.com around embracing limits on personal capacity, helping people feel like a hero to the organization, managing your beliefs as a fundraiser, thinking through how to steward attention well, and that sort of thing. And then we're continuing on with the work that we do at Summit. We get to connect young men and young women to the truth and relationship that they have available to them through Jesus Christ. and that's incredibly meaningful to me.
You said something I want to go back to. That phone call distracted me. Um, you're talking about long form, and then you talked about these. I know what it was. Do I hear a book coming?
I don't know what the form is going to be once all the essays are finished, but they're each article length. They're not quite chapter length. So if it is a book, it's going to be a short book.
All right. Okay. Uh, one thing that has kind of caught me by surprise is you're really honing in on very specific fundamental questions that someone needs to answer if they're going to have a productive career in fundraising. And your topics that you just enumerated a few minutes ago, all right, are so out here from what the conventional profession teaches, the tips, techniques, secrets, da 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 da, run, and then and don't forget to dash the overlay with a veneer of causism. And I haven't heard any of that out of you. You're really going in and saying, okay, if you want to do this, what's it going to mean for you, for the organization you're working with? How's it going to shape you as a person? You see, um, I can be very honest with you. I didn't approach fundraising with that kind of open-ended thought. I was more of a driven individual when I was your
Mm,
age. I got into Ketchum after I was at Westinghouse Electric, and a fundraising background, and of course I cut my teeth on capital fundraising. And of course, capital fundraising is still pretty much the coin of the realm. If you've got that experience, you kind of go up pretty quickly. And so that's what I did. And for instance, not to brag or whatever, but after I'd had my 5 years, I simply walked in off the street, took the CFRE exam, and aced it. And I didn't have to have any courses or anything else, but it was the experience and in the environment I was in is what it was. Not that I'm especially bright. And I had that opportunity. And then when I left Ketchum, I decided I wanted to be VP in a higher ed program. And in 4 years, I was a VP, and ironic, there were people who'd been laboring those offices for years, and I come in and bam, bam, and boom kind of thing. So, but that was my ego talking. I've had to come around on a different way.
mm.
I'm kind of admitting to you that I was like ego driven to get up to that point. Well, I'm a vice president now. Well, boop de doo. Like that's supposed to make something difference to me. I've gotten over that. So anyway, I want to come back in a future episode talking about what you just talked about, the motives. I want you to unpack that with young people, the choices they need to make, whether it's a fit for them or not. And the reason I want you to do that, first of all, it's very uncommon that you would even talk about those things, number one. And number two, I'm sure you're aware of the incredible churn that the profession is experiencing. What's it down to
Hmm.
16 months now? And there are a lot of reasons for that, but one of them is not having a good idea of what you're getting yourself into, and why. Um, so uh, before we conclude this episode, you're coming back, by the way. I'm not letting you off the hook. Um, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think if I were to add anything to our conversation, Larry, I would encourage people to think not only about the tactics that they're using, but their their personal philosophy of connection and relationship that they're offering to their supporter base, right? And that's the ethos of the essay series that I'm writing this year, and the way that I approach my client relationships, and what I hope that I can inspire in others through conversations like this.
Do I have your promise? You're going to come back and talk about that.
Absolutely. Here's the thing. I believe firmly that we are in a where you and I, Larry, are in a profession that has immense potential
Mhm.
for unleashing good on the world. And the rising generations, Gen Z, the millennial generations, in several years, Gen Alpha, they are more connected to causes. They're more driven, they're creative, they're authentic, they're opting out of overwhelm and technology addiction. And those skill sets, when they're leveraged properly and mentored well by seasoned professionals and the supporters at nonprofits, that has incredible potential for the causes that we represent. And I'm excited to continue the conversation and help people find an on ramp to a fulfilling career in fundraising.
On ramp. I love that. I love it. Thank you very much, John. Thank you. Um, well, everyone, you've heard it from John DeLange. A first episode, I can assure you. And we'll be coming back probably not too long from now, and we'll be looking at motivations and rewards in fundraising. That's what I really want to talk about. So thank you very much. We'll be having another one of these come up in a week or so. You know how to reach me. It's Larry at the principles.com. And until then, God bless you.